Today is another exciting episode of Shop My Stash. Basically, this is when I look around our place to find those one or two items that are in desperate need of a makeover. And together we DIY them to give them a whole new look. I don't want to get rid of them, I want to give them a whole new lease on life. And I'm hoping that this will inspire you as well to look around your place and find those items that maybe you could be happy again with as well. I found this stone heart bowl tabletop decor in the thrift store like a year and a half ago, and there have been plenty of times where I've wanted to upcycle this for the channel and just didn't get around to it. So today we're going to. Now from the very beginning, I knew that this heart-shaped bowl wanted to be a candle. The easiest way to ensure you're melting enough candle wax is to fill your vessel not once but twice with your dried candle wax and then melt that amount. Now you can always use just a regular wick, but because this is a heart-shaped candle, I decided to go in with these crackling wood wicks, candle sticky bottom pads. I'm going with technical terms today. And then just strategically place these around the heart shape so that there would be a wick for every part of the candle. I like to use the double boiler when I'm melting my candle wax, so I just put some water in my pot and then placed my candle melting pot inside with the candle wax that I had just measured out. I melted the wax down until it reached about 190, and then I removed it from the heat and let it cool to 170, and then that's when I poured it in. Now I ended up with just a little bit of wax left over, so I had these stone, I'm not even sure what they are, from Dollarama, and I decided to add a normal wick into that, then propping that up with chopsticks so that the wick stands straight up. I just added the remaining wax to that and had myself a second candle. If, like me, you are still working on perfecting your candle making abilities, a little tip: hot heat gun. This will heat up those top layers and smooth out any cracks or divots. Then simply trim your wicks and you're ready to go. First Shop My Stash DIY done. Okay, this next one was a vase that I found at the thrift store. Its original color was poopy brown. I then spray painted it mustard yellow, kept it like that for a couple of years, and then I applied this gray faux stone technique with baking soda paint. You can find this DIY on my blog at jennysplace.com. That was its third lease on life, and now we're about to give it its fourth. I got this paint technique idea from watching a Decorate With Me episode on rural refurb, where she mentioned that she created this faux pottery using spices from her kitchen. She is fabulous. If you haven't checked her out, consider doing so. I'll link her channel below. Now there are a ton of ways that you can make a faux pottery base. I'm just going with the simple baking soda technique because I'll be using this indoors. And to make this, all you need to do is mix some paint. I'm even going with some white chalk paint, but you could use acrylic paint if you had it on hand, and some baking soda. And you just want to mix this up until you end up with a look that is similar to that of buttercream icing. Now I know this might be a little controversial, but I like to go in with some soil just to age my pottery. Now you could totally skip this step if you wanted to, but I love the appearance it gives it. Plus, using this mud really doesn't bother me. I have it in all my plant pots, so why not on the outside of my vase pots? Now, Rural Refurb had said spices, so I had a bunch of spices I grew in my garden. I had way too much sage. I bought a lot of garam masala. I had a bunch of that was kind of getting old and needed to be used up. And then I had also some ground coriander that I just had tons of and figured why not. And then chili flakes. I noticed she had chili flakes in her bowl, so I decided to throw in a bit of those as well. I have used cinnamon before. I'll link that video up here, but I decided to forego that spice this time because it kind of gives it a bit of a
pinkish hue, and I was kind of going for something a bit more dark and pocky. Is that a word? Pocky? Okay, so now you're going to want to go in with a nice thick paintbrush and apply that baking soda medium to your vase or pottery. I suggest keeping one hand dry for picking up the dried spices and sprinkling it on, and then using your other hand to pat that down and really work those spices into that baking soda paint mixture. And you're going to want to do the same with the soil. So just sprinkle it on, add a few spices, pat it all in. You're going to get messy. You're going to make a lot of mess around you. That's okay. DIYing is fun, and this is nothing a vacuum cleaner can't fix. So get in there, start throwing those spices, and if you're using it, soil around, because the end result is this, and I think we can agree it's spectacular. This beautiful vase trio came from my mom's house. I love the shape, but my mom's a bit more modern. Our house is definitely farmhouse. So these needed just a little bit of a tweaking so that I could keep them, use them, but make them fit more into our style. So to do this, I'm gonna try out some Craft Smart white chalk paint and just apply a couple of layers to the glass vase. By the way, I did like the way that this chalk paint applied. And each of these 3 vases got a coat of paint. Once a day for 3 days so that the paint would just really adhere nicely. To give these a bit more of a rustic feel, I decided to go in with one of my favorite go-to solutions, and that is twine. This time though, I went in with a thicker rope twine, and it just really added that interesting touch that these vases needed. Now you're just gonna wrap that around the top of your vase and secure it at the beginning and the end with a little bit of hot glue, but you definitely don't need to add hot glue all the way through. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before or read any of my blog posts, you would know that I am terrible at getting straight lines. So I went in with a ruler to make sure that my next vase had matched up exactly, and I did this for all 3. And there you have it, our third Shop My Stash Trash to Treasure DIY done. For this next DIY, we're going to make some pillow covers. Now, I have some IKEA pillow covers, oversized ones that I had laying around from my IKEA Meets Cricut video. I will link that one here above. And some curtains that I got from my mom. The vision was to create a faux pocket at the bottom of the pillow, so I did this by cutting out just enough of that material, leaving the part that had the finished hem and lace at the top. I purchased these packets of brown wooden buttons from Michael's, and they had 6 of the same, and since I was making 2 pillowcases, I knew these would work out perfectly. Now, I can't sew. It's just one of those DIY skills that I want to learn and just haven't taken the time to do so yet. So if you can sew and you want to sew this together, that would be ideal. But if you don't, or you're like me and you can't, then just go in with a little bit of fabric fusion along the edges, fold those over to create hems, and you just want to make sure that this lines up perfectly with the IKEA pillowcase. And then I just like to keep everything in place until that glue dries using little clamps, little DIY clamps, or you could use paper clips. Those also work well. Now the buttonholes were quite large, so I decided to go in with a little bit of twine and use that instead of thread. Now this worked brilliantly, but not gonna lie, it's gonna take a little bit of elbow grease. Now to attach the fabric pocket to the pillowcase, I decided to go in with some peel and stick fabric fuse as opposed to using more of that fabric fusion glue, just because this is really easy to use. The fabric fusion glue, you would need a lot to adhere it to it, and it would leave your fabric feeling quite stiff. So I just placed the fabric tape along the sides and the bottom and then peeled away the backing. Next, line it up perfectly with the pillowcase so that it fits on both sides and the bottom and looks like it's actually sewn into the pillowcase. To make sure that the fabric adheres really well to the tape, I went in with my Cricut spatula and just pressed down really hard along all the edges. The best things about these pillowcases is you can stick things in the pockets, they completely freshen up my craft room, and we used things that were found around the house. I had this Dollar Tree basket hanging around the house from when I did some gift basket and used this sort of as the Christmas tree base. It was starting to look a little ratty and I didn't really want to keep it just to use it again for another basket, so I decided instead to turn it into a plant holder. I started by removing the brown raffia that was wrapped around the wire frame. And this was super easy to do with just a pair of basic scissors. Next, I grabbed a roll of twine and tied that to the bottom rim of the basket, and then made sure that I slid the knot so that it was sort of in the inside part so that you couldn't see it on the outside, and then adhered that with a little bit of hot glue. And then I just started wrapping. Now, I did start with a few dollops of hot glue in the beginning, but after a while, I found it was easier just to wrap and hold it really tightly so that all of the twine stays in place. You're going to want to work with strands that are about 6 to 7 feet tall. Start by slipping the twine end through the bottom rung of the basket. You're going to want to tie them to the bottom of the basket each time, wrap it around, and then once again tie it to the basket at the bottom. Continue to do this wrapping and tying of the twine to the metal frame until the entire basket is covered. Next, cut off any of the strands at the bottom of the basket and just tuck those knots inside so that you can't see them on the outside of the basket. How many times can I say basket? I decided to give a cheap plastic plant pot a quick little makeover with some of that leftover baking soda paint, and this is what I'm going to put inside the twine basket. Bottom of the basket has a wire mesh, so I am going to use this old curling trophy platter that I found, I think, in our house when we bought it, and it's all tarnished and worn and just it looks fantastic. So we're gonna put the white baking soda painted basket inside the twine basket on top of this tarnished silver platter.
Today is another exciting episode of Today is another exciting episode of Shut My Today is an Today is another Well, that's it for today's Trash to Treasure Shop My Stash DIYs. If you enjoyed those, make sure you subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. If you hit the notification bell, it'll let you know the next time I upload. Oh, and you might enjoy these.